Hola, hola. Estimados representantes del Banco Central y del Gobierno de El Salvador, dear AFI members, distinguished guests, good morning. Before we start, may I ask you all to close your eyes? No worries, there's no magic trick. So please close your eyes. I will let you know when you can open them again. Close your eyes, please. My name is Paul Surreaux. I am a white male with short brown hair in my late 30s. Today, I am wearing a purple shirt and a brown trousers. And I am comfortably seated in my wheelchair. Behind me, there is the Barrier-Free Finance Initiative logo, the organization I represent, which is dedicated to promoting the financial inclusion of persons with disabilities. You can open your eyes. How was the description? Some of you may wonder why I introduce myself in that way. This is a common inclusive practice to provide essential information for persons with visual impairments. It is a simple gesture, but an inclusive one, that reminds us how important it is to provide the information that everyone needs. This brings me to the topic of my intervention today: the inclusion of persons with disabilities and what it means in the context of financial inclusion. I don't claim to have all the answers, but what I can offer you is my journey and the lessons I've learned along the way. 11 years ago, I had an accident. My life took an unexpected turn. An accident left me in this wheelchair, and because of it, an all new perspective opened up in front of me. Before that day, I was an investment officer conducting due diligence at financial institutions for an impact investment fund. I believed I understood what it meant to reach vulnerable populations. But in reality, I was blind to an entire dimension of vulnerability. In my previous role, I never once questioned whether the doors of the institutions I visited were wide enough to accommodate someone like me. It never crossed my mind to ask if this institution had considered the needs of people with disabilities in their services. At the time, I was living in Luxembourg, and it wasn't until I found myself in this chair that I realized the bank I visited had 2 steps at the entrance. It might seem like a small barrier, but for someone in my situation, it is a challenging one. These are the details I've begun to notice, not all at once, but slowly as they become part of my daily reality. And there are so many different realities in the disability world. To begin, I would like to ensure we all share a clear understanding on how disability is defined. According to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, persons with disabilities are defined as. Please take a few seconds to read the definition. Those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. This definition revealed 2 key components: the impairment itself, in my case, the lack of mobility, and the barriers that society places before individuals, the steps at the bank. When these 2 elements intersect, they create the disability. Now, and before illustrating the main barriers faced by persons with disabilities in accessing financial services, let's talk about numbers. I have prepared a quick warm-up exercise, this time to better understand the scale of the issue. So let me ask you this question. What percentage of the global population has a disability? Please do not ask Google. 4 possible answers. Is it 3%, 7%, 12%, or 16%? So please answer by showing of hands. Who thinks it's 3%? Nobody. 1, 2, okay. Who thinks it's 7%? A little bit more. Who thinks it's 12%? Even more than 7%. Okay. Who thinks it's 16%? Even more. I'm not sure we have the count, but 16% is winning. Okay. So those who answered 16% are correct. According to the WHO, there is approximately 16% of the global population, about 1.3 billion people, living with significant disabilities. This is roughly 1 out of 7 persons, making this population the largest minority in the world. Some of you may be looking around the room and thinking, but I don't see 1 out of 7 people in here with a disability. And you're probably right. There likely aren't. This isn't because the numbers are not accurate, but rather because of the significant barriers persons with disability face in accessing opportunities like being in this room today. I am one of the lucky ones. Barriers in accessing education, healthcare, transportation, and employment are legend for persons with disabilities. And this is only and this high level statistic is only the tip of the iceberg. Of the total population living with disabilities, 80% reside in developing countries, where access to services and opportunities is often less accessible. For those who actively promote gender equity, did you know that according to UN Women, up to 75% of persons with disabilities in low and middle income countries are actually women with disabilities? This highlights the intersectional nature of the issue. Persons with disabilities are represented within all subgroups of the population and are typically among the most marginalized members within these groups. Disability and poverty are closely linked. Around 20% of the world's poorest have some form of disability, and people with disabilities are 50% more likely to experience poverty. And the demographic forecasts show that these numbers are on the rise. 46% of people aged 60 and above have disabilities. And between 2015 and 2050, the proportion of the world population over 60 will nearly double, further emphasizing the growing needs for accessible solutions. These numbers are not just statistics. They represent real people with real life, facing real challenges. They show us that disability is not a niche issue. It is a universal one. It is the only marginalized group that anyone could potentially join at any stage in life, whether temporarily or permanently. Access to financial services which is a powerful tool for economic empowerment, remains limited or painfully accessible for the vast majority of this population. This brings me back to the definition. Remember the societal barriers component? Our societies too often fail to provide the accessibility solution that meet the specific needs of persons with disabilities. So what are the barriers in the context of financial inclusion? Firstly, the physical barrier. They are also often the most physical obstacles, such as inaccessible bank branches or ATM. Actually, ATMs are the worst. In some countries, you find them in the street, located in a 5-meter square room with a glass door at the entrance and 3 big steps. Even when I can access it, I struggle getting my transaction done. Pushing the keys on the keyboard is already a challenge. In one instance, at the rehabilitation center in Luxembourg, a place with many persons with disabilities, the machine soloed my car. I wasn't fast enough in removing it. It was just impossible to reach. Those type of barriers are the obvious one, yet they persist in many places. This said, I also have experienced ATM fully accessible, with a second keyboard at wheelchair height and voice commands. Solutions are there. Secondly, the digital barriers. We have seen it throughout this forum. Digital technologies hold the promise for improved financial inclusion, including overcoming many physical barriers. But they can also create new ones, particularly for those with visual or intellectual impairments. For instance, websites and mobile banking apps often lack the essential accessibility features like screen readers and voice commands. Did you know that 98% of top 1 million websites do not include any accessibility feature? In short, they are inaccessible. Still, solutions exist. As these interfaces are increasingly used for banking transactions, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines must become the reference baseline. On the Barrier Free Finance Initiative website, you can find a great example. Louis Voice is a simple plugin that can be integrated in any app in the world to enable voice command transactions. Thirdly, the social and attitudinal barriers. Perhaps the most dangerous barriers are the ones rooted in people's attitudes. Stereotypes and stigmas persist, such as the belief that persons with disabilities are less capable to repay a loan. This bias can lead to discrimination and exclusion. Let me share a story that illustrates just how deeply these social and attitudinal barriers can be. When living in Myanmar, my wife and I decided to go for an excursion on the other side of the river, near Yangon, the biggest city. We went to the ferry station, and while she was buying the ticket, I waited outside. I was wearing a hat that day that I put on my lap while waiting. Here's where it gets interesting. As I sat there, people began dropping money into the hat. They saw pity. They thought I was begging. Maybe it was because of my dressing style, but most probably because of my physical condition. What this experience taught me is how quickly people can misjudge those with disabilities. In their eyes, I was in need of charity. In some cultures, disability is even seen as a punishment for past wrongdoings, leading to stigmas and social exclusion. Changing these attitudes require a fundamental shift in thinking. And how can we do this? With education. I will come back to this. And there is many more barriers lying at every step of the client journey. The informational barrier. Even when a person with disability can physically access a bank, his digital services, and the staff is well trained, they may encounter further obstacles with information not presented in accessible formats. This can include legal documents, promotional or educational material, and many more. Or the barriers linked to policies. The absence of laws and regulations designed to protect the right of persons with disability result in a lack of roadmap for financial services provider to be disability inclusive. And when this regulation exists, they lack the mechanisms to be enforced. This lack of adapted policies and processes also applies internally to the financial service provider. When I was leading an impact investment department at a microfinance institution in Cambodia, we developed a loan product coupled with financial literacy for persons with disabilities. My staff was capacitated, and we thought our processes were fully inclusive. In one instance, a loan officer comes to me saying he cannot disburse a loan to a person with disability. So I ask him why. And he answers that it's because the client cannot thumbprint the contract, a standard signing process for a microfinance institution in Cambodia. So I asked him why not, and he replied, because he has no arms. I found that hilarious and shocking at the same time. In this occasion, we asked the client to sign with the toe. And this is not only an issue for smaller microfinance programs. At the time, I personally struggled to open my bank account at a leading bank in the country because I wasn't able to replicate several times the exact same signature because of the lack of mobility in my hand. It took me several hours, and I had to mobilize the entire branch staff to do what should have been a straightforward banking operation: open a bank account. Alternative solutions exist, but they must be legally enforceable. Imagine a world where signing a loan contract happens through a bank virtual reality interface. Unlocking this possibility in a near future is possible, but requires an enabling legal framework. As I flagged these barriers, I also highlighted that solutions exist already. To mainstream these solutions and to ensure true inclusion, we need the engagement from all actors. So why should you and the other financial sector stakeholders engage in disability inclusion? Firstly, disability inclusion is a matter of social justice, a human right one. Persons with disability are explicitly mentioned throughout the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. As we work to achieve these global goals, it is clear that we cannot succeed without embracing the guiding principle of leaving no one behind. And this obviously includes those with a disability. Secondly, disability inclusion represents a significant market opportunity. Remember, 16% of the global population are persons with disabilities. Persons with disabilities have the potential to be not just clients, but also business partners, investors, board members, and employees. It is an untapped market segment, highly overlooked, that offers different perspectives through unique lived experiences. Lastly, by engaging in disability inclusion, you enhance the customer experience for everyone. How? By embracing the universal design principles. You can see them on the screen. Applying them at every stage, at every design stage, whether it is to create a product, setting up your offices, or formulating a policy, leads to innovation for all. For example, consider the ramps designed for wheelchair access. These ramps not only serve wheelchair users, they are also incredibly useful for travelers pulling luggages, parents pulling strollers, or even delivery personnel with carts. Similarly, did you know that 40% of Netflix users consistently use subtitles? A feature originally developed for persons with hearing impairments has become a preferred feature for millions of users worldwide. This is the power of universal design. It doesn't just accommodate, it elevates the experience for all. Now, how can we engage to dismantle the barriers and promote the financial inclusion for persons with disabilities? The answers lie in a comprehensive, ecosystem-based approach. And how can we materialize an ecosystem approach? First and foremost, with education. We need to tackle the lack of understanding and visibility about disability-related challenges. Education is the foundation of meaningful changes. All stakeholders, from regulators to financial services providers, must be deeply aware of and engage in disability inclusion. This begins with sector-level awareness-raising campaigns, followed by comprehensive trainings for staff. Without this crucial awareness, there can be no progress. Secondly, by doing research. Generating accurate information is essential. We must allocate time and resources to collect and analyze data on the financial inclusion of persons with disabilities. Is there any enabling policy? What percentage of persons with disability hold a bank account? Are financial services providers equipped with accessibility solutions? Those questions need answers so they can shape strategies. Thirdly, we need to support the implementation of disability-inclusive solutions. Education and information will build a solid foundation for engagement. But to drive the change, we need concrete actions towards disability inclusion. The most effective way to achieve this is by involving persons with disability in every step of the process. The disability motto, "Nothing about us without us," ensures that the solutions developed are directly informed by those with lived experiences. In addition, fostering cross-sector collaboration. For example, bringing together disability solution providers and financial institutions can lead to the creation of innovative, accessible solutions. Remember the Louis Voice example? It was created by a person who is blind. Engaging all actors, all stakeholders in this collaborative effort is key to build a truly inclusive financial ecosystem. As financial inclusion professionals, each of us has a role to play in this mission. Academics, can gather, analyze, and disseminate data on disability inclusion. Research and insights can spotlight best practices and drive evidence-based policymaking. Industry associations can promote disability inclusion as a cross-cutting topic. Integrating this focus in the advocacy and capacity building services to members has the potential to mainstream disability inclusion. In that regard, I can only be grateful to AFI, who is leading the way by raising awareness on the topic, generating key publications and webinars. Donors, you can lead by example by embedding disability inclusion components within the project cycle, from the design stage to the reporting stage, ensuring that disability inclusion becomes a measurable and integral part of every initiative you support, can catalyze change across the sector. Financial services providers shall embrace the disability inclusion journey, adapting products, services, and infrastructure to address the systemic barriers faced by people with disabilities in accessing financial services. This engagement will increase the customer base, drive greater customer experience, and provide a much needed opportunity to the largest minority in the world. Win-win situation, right? Lenders and investors can integrate disability inclusion in their investment processes, completing an accessibility checklist during due diligence, adding inclusion relevant covenants in legal documents, and collecting disability indicators can significantly leverage best practices and change behaviors. They have this convincing power: money. Speaking about convincing power, governments and regulators, you have the power to shape an inclusive financial landscape by creating incentive mechanisms and enforcing specific policies that promotes the financial inclusion of persons with disabilities. This responsibility includes safeguarding customer protection through regulation that prevent discrimination and mandate accessibility. By doing so, you can promote equity and channel innovation in the financial system. As you leave this room today, I wish you will remember three key concepts. Firstly, disability inclusion is a cross-cutting topic that touches every aspect of society, from gender equity to the digital transformation. Adopting a transversal lens and embracing universal design across your organization, processes, and actions will lead to the implementation of meaningful inclusion. Finally, fostering an ecosystem approach, combining education, data collection, and implementation is essential for driving the structural change needed to achieve true financial inclusion. Sitting here today in front of you, thanks to AFI, it's a huge honor and a first steps towards working together in making financial inclusion truly inclusive. My personal journey led me to fund the Barrier-Free Finance Initiative because whether by destiny, opportunity, or both, I found myself at the intersection of the disability world and the financial inclusion one. Advancing this cause is my passion and my commitment. I invite you to join the Barrier-Free Finance Initiative as we are creating a community of practice. We have developed tools and methodologies to promote disability inclusion specific for the financial community. But we cannot do it alone. We need you. Together, we can ensure that financial services are accessible to everyone, including the 1.3 billion persons with disability worldwide. Engage and join us in our mission to create a world where financial services include all of us. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Paul, thank you so much. Amazing, Paul. Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as is the usual FE style, we have something special prepared for you for this session. Without preempting too much, let us focus on the screen as the video introduces the session, and I will